Okay, so Adam, we've done a few deals together. We've also talked alongside with your real estate perspective and how you got started investing. Can I ask you a few questions? Where did it all start? What was your first deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me on, Ethan. I appreciate it. Yeah, we have done some stuff together, and I really appreciate you having me on. My first deal, I think, when I was just starting, I found a single family home house in, I think, Schiller Park or something. It was like $80,000, and I put in $20,000 of renovation in there. Didn't really know what I was doing. I got stood up by a contractor. I thought the work would only take 5,000. He told me 5,000, and then he just took the money and left. So I was kinda stuck, trying to find some contractors, and eventually got that started, flipped it for about 155,
Okay.
and that was my first deal.
And was that cash? Did you buy that all in cash?
No, I did not buy it in cash. I bought it with with a mortgage,
Okay.
like a personal mortgage.
And how was that process of getting that first money up front for the property?
It was daunting. Or getting the money upfront for the down payment, you mean?
Like getting the money for the whole purchase of the property.
Yeah, for the whole purchase of the property, it wasn't as bad because I also had a W-2 job. So I was working as an accountant, and, so I had pretty good credit. I had a little bit of money saved up, and, I just went through guaranteed rate. It was, one of the big mortgage companies at the time.
And before real estate, I know we touched on it just a little bit. You were an accountant. What did you do beforehand that got you into real estate?
Yeah, so I read this book called The 4-Hour Workweek, and, it just opened me up to the possibilities of having a regular job and having a side hustle. And what, the guy, I forgot his name, but what he preaches is, like, free up your time during the work week, so less commuting, less, um, working from home, less going to the office, and then use that to build a side gig. So that's kinda what got me on my investment journey.
Okay. And with this side gig, how much of the time did you allot for you to build your real estate career as well as your, W-2 career?
Uh, I realized very early on that my W-2 career was capped, and it was very limited. What I mean by that is you start off 60,000 and you work for a couple years and you have a little pay jump and you go to 80 and then 120. And I realized very quickly I wanted to be in a position where my earnings were uncapped. And so after I read that book, it was kind of a pathway. So I started um, trying to work from home more. And I got the chance to work from home. I kind of just took it and I just dived all of my time into working on my side gig. I worked just enough not to be fired.
Okay. And I want to touch back on the uncapped part that you talked about with the real estate career. Did you see yourself scaling fast? How far did you see yourself reaching that uncapped potential that you can earn?
Um, uh, can you clarify that question?
Yes. With the whole uncapped part of being an entrepreneur or doing something in real estate, did you see yourself scaling to the part you are right now? Do you see yourself scaling even more?
No, no, no. What I really liked was just learning about it. Just learning about the different types of real estate, learning about the different things you can do in real estate. And I just didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I just liked it. I liked the concept of owning something. And I always tell people this, like, I felt rich before I got rich. Like I felt like I had the knowledge to do a lot of these things before I actually did it. And when I actually did it, there were bumps along the way, but it was largely what I envisioned. So I never really thought I would be like in a position like this. Yeah.
Okay. And with scaling up from that first property that you bought and refinanced and sold it to what, 115, 118, was it?
Mhm.
Did you see yourself scaling to the part you are right now? How do you scale yourself? And what was the cause of that?
Yeah, so scale, uh, I guess for me was in like clumps. What I mean by that is, I like learned flipping homes, and that helped me slowly build up a little bit of cash. but then I realized different things along the way, and when I implemented those things, it helped me level up. So what I mean by that is, like, I learned very quickly that when you flip a home, you have to give half your profits to Uncle Sam. Whereas if you kept a home, you didn't have to pay any taxes. And what helped me was learning these concepts, also having my W-2 job and keeping that, and growing my skill set. So while I was flipping homes, I was also going to get my MBA. I was also doing things in marketing. I was also buying restaurants, buying laundromats. So all these things contributed to kind of the growth. Um, if that answers your question.
Yeah. And you started flipping houses. Did you ever buy a rental? When did you buy a rental? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I started buying rentals in 2017, I think, and it was duplexes and triplexes, and at that time, it was very cheap. And what I did was I just saved all my money, from my flips and my work, and I just started buying rentals. And, luckily, I got them at great prices, and they've all appreciated.
And starting out with those rentals, you bought them on cash. So you didn't need to worry about a mortgage or your overhead with that cash flow, right?
I did have a mortgage. I just made sure that my cash flow at, you know, 80% occupancy was enough to cover my mortgage.
Okay. And can you scale that down, the 80% occupancy and then the cash flow to the viewers who may not know about the real estate terms? Can you scale it down a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So when you buy an apartment and there's people living there, they are paying what is market rents or what a random person off the street would pay for it, or they're paying legacy rents, which is they've been there for a long time and they are paying what they've been used to paying, but not necessarily what a new tenant would be paying. And so what I try to do is I try to make sure their legacy rents, which is what they've been paying, are enough to cover my mortgage. And so there was upside when they left, and I was able to renew a new tenant and make even more money.
And with making money off of a mortgage or your overhead on a on a rehab that you did to end up being a rental, what is a good percent or like a kind of a cap amount of money that you want to be making when having cash flow on a rental?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I kinda think about it differently just because we have high interest rates, but back then it was very low interest rates. And, I kind of realized these low interest rates weren't going to last forever, so I locked in 30-year mortgages. And so my cash flow was pretty good. I think I entered a lot of them at, like, 9 or 10 caps, and then through increasing the rent, they ended up being, like, 12 or 13 or 14 caps, and then cash on cash, I think it was, like, around 25.
Okay. And what point did you start thinking in terms of scaling to that one property, then the next one, in terms of building your rental portfolio, having restaurants, doing flips on the side? At what point did that all switch over to the bigger idea?
I think these ideas are just ever evolving, and, I think I was telling you about this earlier, I try to just learn from a wide variety of people, and so, whatever comes next, I guess, is where I'll go, like, the landscape has changed so much from 2018, 19 with, like, low interest rates. During COVID, we had a period where interest rates were rising up, and a lot of people didn't lock up their low interest rates, so they went bankrupt when interest rates went from, like, 3.5 to 7%. Um, Luckily, I locked up 30-year interest rates, and the ones I didn't were home runs that were still really cash flowing at 7%, so, um, I think it's ever changing, like, I'm starting to do some more auction stuff, I'm starting to do some more tax liens, and, so just wherever the money goes.
So, exploring the options with networking, do you go up to anybody you think that can be of value to yourself? Like, where do you find these opportunities with networking?
Um, like, I like to drink, I like to have a good time, and so, I find myself in these situations that I'm just sharing my life story, um, not from a point where I'm looking for something in another person, but just wanting to be curious about them regardless of who they are, and, that in turn allows them to also share their story with me, and a lot of times, they they just turn out to be really interesting people, and I f and one thing I realize is, like, I don't need a person to be rich to be interesting. They can just be a normal person, and I want to find something that's interesting about them. And, I think that thought process has really allowed me to connect with a lot of people on a genuine level.
Okay. And scaling your brand as well, do you think networking has been the biggest part, or what was the biggest part of your brand scaling?
I think networking for sure, learning, constantly, like, watching YouTube videos. I'm watching, lessons from, like, the great investors, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, like, all those guys, and I'm constantly applying those lessons to myself, learning about different tax strategies, how to consolidate wealth, trust. Like, I just got out of a, large class settlement lawsuit, and so, now I'm learning about, like, asset protection, how to shield yourself from a lot of, like, predatory actions that, people might take against you.
And throughout the time you were scaling, were there ever any setbacks that you needed to work around?
Um, yeah, I'll give you an example. So I had a big construction project that lasted 3 years. In that 3-year time, I was projected to have a 3% interest rate when I finished completing it, and we were at I think I was gonna be making, like, $30,000 a month, and the mortgage was gonna be, like, 7,000. It turned out that interest rates shot up, and the mortgage went to, like, 13,000 at the time, and my revenue dropped. Also, material costs went significantly up. But I've always been very selective with the deals that I do, so even though that happened, I was still able to make some money, and, it was stressful. I mean, my construction budget went over $200,000. I had to pull a line of credit from my home, and, but when it was all said and done, I just budgeted so much into the difference between the revenue and my mortgage that it didn't really matter if it dropped by, like, another 5K, 10K.
And with all the scaling, can you give me 3 tips, maybe tricks that you could provide to the viewers who might want to start building their own rental portfolio or real estate endeavors?
Yeah, I would say just keep on doing what you're doing. Everything takes time, and all the great businesses that don't last have just leveraged up so quickly. So I think build slowly, and it'll eventually snowball by itself. The trick is not to get pressured into doing things that, um, you don't wanna do, or things that you think might be you might be able to force to work, um, because all the deals that I've done that have been really home runs have been super easy. Like, there was just a lot of money on the side, and looking back, those deals have made me, like, 80% of the money, which means all the other deals that I did, I don't even have to do them. I could just wait for that one thing that really makes sense. Um, and the problem with a lot of people is when you wanna scale, you wanna do everything under the sun, but you really have to consider the opportunity cost of being super busy and missing out on that, like, one really good deal. And so being at the right place at the right time doesn't really happen when you're in other places and you're trying to scale and your head's in the weeds. So I would say always put a little bit of money on the side for something that's going to make asymmetrical value, which is a little bit of money makes a lot of money. And grind your bread and butter on the other side, but don't spend 100% of your time grinding bread and butter because you'll never be able to get out of the weeds when that really good deal comes.
We talked a lot about the real estate side of your personality. Is there anything that made you want to get into being an entrepreneur early on in your life or sometime?
Yeah, I think people are kind of born with it. So I was always selling shoes. I was selling like fake LV, Rolexes. I was selling like Jordans in high school. Um, and I think it came from just maybe a tougher background. So I was pretty poor growing up. My parents didn't really have anything. We were like, when I first got to America, we were all living in like a one bedroom. We had like a shared one bedroom in a house. And so my parents never really wanted or gave me money to buy things. And I always wanted things. And so the natural path was just for me to like start selling whatever I could, illegal or legal, you know.
And with that, it made you want to scale. Kind of what point in your life did you realize that real estate was a path for you?
Uh, I I never realized it until I flipped a couple homes and I'm like, wow, you can make pretty good money doing it. And in the beginning, I was doing everything by myself. I was like swinging hammers, hanging drywall, and it took a long time. And but slowly I'm like, I developed contacts. I developed ways to manage people. I developed boundaries for what I can tolerate and what I can't. And so so then that helped me find really good people on the team, people who are like-minded, who I could trust, and who can go the distance. And I've just developed, nurtured, and grown these people alongside with me.
And touching back on the over leveraging yourself, I know you mentioned earlier having some cash put aside to maybe find that one great deal that can make you all the money. Uh, can you dive deeper into that? How do you leverage your deals?
So I wasn't doing that before. When I had under $1 million, I was going all in on every deal. And if you look at all the greats, they keep on going all in. So for me, like 20 mil, I'm not gonna go all in. 10 mil, 5 mil, I'm not gonna go all in because I don't want to change my lifestyle. But if you look at people like Elon Musk or people who are like billionaires, like when they have 20 mil, they're like, I'm just getting started, all in, make 100, right? Now I have 100 mil. Who is crazy enough to be like, all in, I'm gonna live in like a one bedroom shack and I'm gonna just deploy 100 mil to make a billion? Like, you need to be crazy enough to do that. And I think entrepreneurs are all crazy to a certain level. Like, I was crazy enough where I had 100K, all in. I was living in a rental, right? I have 500K all in, and that kinda helped me grow. So now I'm at a point where I'm comfortable. I would advise against that, but I think everybody has different risk tolerance.
And with putting money into your business, was there ever a point in time where maybe early on you wanted to live that flashy lifestyle most people want to live that comes with money?
The flashy lifestyle and being early on, no, I never wanted it because, uh, I was always around really wealthy people, and I realized early on if I wanted to compare wealth with them, I was always going to lose. And so I developed a personality where I reached out to people and liked people and I befriended people not based on their wealth, but based on other things that they can offer or interests. And so, when I was 20, I was broke until I started, flipping houses. Like every dollar I made at my W-2 job, I just spent partying. And that was just what I wanted to do at the time. I didn't really care about wealth. I was still getting girls. I was still going to fancy places to eat. I just didn't have any money at the end of the month in my bank account. And I thought I lived a pretty happy life, you know? Um, and then when I started my real estate journey, I started saving money just because that was what was necessary to advance that journey. It wasn't necessarily I started saving money because I wanted to be rich. I just wanted to buy more houses, and that's what it took. Yeah, I had to save money.
And with younger generations like myself, we see a bunch of people on Instagram or YouTube who are living that flashy lifestyle. Instead of putting money towards something that can make you look more wealthy, what would you say that you could do with real estate?
Yeah, I think, I didn't do this, but I think for all the younger people that are like 20 and early 20s, I'm pushing 40. So, I say like save as much money as you can. 5,000 in an index fund at 20 is so different from $5,000 as an index fund, when you're 40. And, I was listening to a podcast. Do you have time for a longer story maybe?
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast. There's a guy named Manish Pabrai. He's like a really great investor. And the story he told was the settlers came to New York City and they offered the Indians $35 to buy the city of New York, which not a lot of money. You can say, hey, they got scammed, you know? Um, but when you really do the math, if they took the $35 and they put it in something that compounded 7% interest, I think the math over like 300 years of compounding was $34 trillion. And I think the overall wealth in the world is like 100 trillion. So you're talking about 1/4 of the overall wealth in the world. And so um, it's not really about like, I think investing, if you want to take a long-term approach, it's really about time into the market. And starting young is just super important to do. Um, and so, if you think about putting $5,000 when you're 20, by the time you're 60, you're gonna have like $600,000. And, it doesn't take a lot to do that. And I think if people realize the power of compounding, then they could just sacrifice one meal a week, right? $100 a week. Then you get $5,200 a year. And you just put that into an S&P, into an index, into, a wholesale deal, into something that will get you a return and you just start early. So that was kind of a long
No, that was really good.
story. I thought when I heard that story, it was like very impactful to me.
And it was off a podcast, right?
Yep.
Do you have any podcasts you could mention that might help grow someone's mindset?
Yeah. So My First Million is a really good podcast. They interview a lot of entrepreneurs. And they really try to get the story of how they made their first million, how they went from like 0 to 100,000. And I think that's the hardest to do. For me, it was working a W-2 job and saving up and just, for 10 years. I From the time I started working when I was like 15 to 25, I saved $100,000. And then, this year it'll take me like couple months to make that, or just one project. And so just the compounding effect of money is really important for young people to understand.
And what are you cash flowing now compared to maybe 5 or 10 years ago?
Compared to 5 or 10 years ago, I think with appreciation, not including appreciation, I'm doing like 70 a month.
And that's just over time.
Yeah, that's over time,
Yeah, yeah.
man. So, like maybe 2 years ago, I was doing 40. Last year, I was doing 60. This year, I'm doing 70. Just bigger and bigger deals, man.
Galen.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who had 100 units, and he was saying his dad started the business as a plumber and just started buying single-family houses. And he was buying single-family houses for about 30 years or 20 years. And then when his son got out of school, tough job market the past couple of years during COVID, and his dad was like, "Why don't you come work for me?" And his son's like, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." Um, and I think in the 4 years, they added 40 units, which means his dad worked 30 years for to make 60 units, and all it took was another 4 years to double that. That is the snowball effect.
Mhm. Wow. And was there a point in your gradual pace of getting you more units that you had a big lump sum of properties? That was a snowball effect.
Yeah, it was. So I was flipping and I was just acquiring rentals. And then I had a couple big deals that made me like $1 million, uh, that made me $1 million a deal. So it was 3 months I made 700K. I think 6 months I made 800K. And then I think a year and a half I made like 1.2. And instead of spending it, I just dumped it all back into rentals. Um, and that helped me really like jump, you know.
And to kind of end off the video, what is one thing that you can get from all a takeaway from all of the experience that you have that you can give to the viewers who may be struggling as an entrepreneur or want to build their own path? What is one thing you can give to them?
Yeah, I think everybody's gonna be different, but the one thing I think, or I'll say two things because they're kind of different sides of the same coin, is you don't stop learning when you're out of school. So you need to constantly be learning. And the other side is you need to take extreme accountability of yourself. So when you learn these things, it's not like, I'll give you an example. Like I had a failed real estate deal. Somebody scammed me. And instead of saying, hey man, like this guy sucked, or um, if I went with somebody else, I wouldn't have been scammed. It was, how do I make sure for myself that I don't get scammed again? What are some of the things that I need to learn myself? Because I can't change anybody else. And that's what I mean by extreme accountability is like learning and applying it to yourself in a way where you don't feel like the victim, no matter what happens. And the only thing you can change is yourself.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam.
Okay. Thank you.
Sweet.